Welcome to the bond. The allegations by the President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto, that Ford Foundation has been behind the protests in Kenya that they've rebranded as anarchy is very alarming. But the confusion within is actually more confusing.
Tutashirikiana namna hiyo, na mimi nataka niwahakikishie ya kwamba tunatengeneza team. Si mnajua kuna kazi nimefanya hapo. Sasa mimi na kuanzia next week nitaanza kupanga hiyo serikali nyingine. Namna hiyo. Nyinyi mko tayari tupange hiyo serikali nyingine? Nipange hiyo serikali nyingine. Na nilikuwa Nakuru. Leo asubuhi nilikuwa Nakuru. Watu wa Nakuru wakasema hatutaki fujo. Hatutaki vita. Hatutaki wale wanaharibu mali. Watu wa Nakuru waliniambia we want peace. Nyinyi watu wa Kuresoi mnasema nini? One peace. Hebu nisikie watu wa Kuresoi mnasemaje? Ati mnasemaje? Mnasema we want peace. Hebu kila mtu aseme we want peace. Mnasemaje? Ati mnasemaje? Rudia tena. We want peace in Kenya. We have no use for anarchy and violence and destruction of property and loss of life. Wale ambao wanasponsor hiyo violence, sisi tunawajua. And I want to call out those who are behind the anarchy in Kenya, those who are behind the sponsoring the chaos in the Republic of Kenya. Shame on them, because they are sponsoring violence against our democratic nation. Mimi nataka niulize watu wa Ford Foundation watuambie hiyo pesa wanatoa ifanye fujo ndio wapate faida gani? We are going to call them out and we are going to tell them if they are not interested in democracy in Kenya, if they are going to sponsor violence, if they are going to sponsor anarchy, we are going to call them out and we are going to tell them they either style up or they leave. Tunaelewana jameni ama tuelewani? Mnataka watu watununulie vijana ati wafanye fujo katika Kenya? Vijana sio wa kufanya fujo. Vijana ni wa kufanya kazi. Na hiyo ndio mpango tuko naye ya kupanga ajira ya hawa vijana. Wakati tunapanga ajira ya hawa vijana kwa affordable housing, tunapanga ajira ya hawa vijana kwa hii markets, tunapanga ajira ya hawa vijana kwa digital jobs, tunapanga ajira ya hawa vijana kwa mambo ya export of labor, tunapanga ajira ya hawa vijana kwa mambo ya manufacturing na mambo ya value addition na mambo ya industrialization. Kuna watu hawataki tupange vijana wafanye kazi, wanataka kupanga vijana wafanye fujo. We want to tell them we are a democratic nation. And the young people of Kenya, they are not available to conduct violence. They are not available to have anarchy in our country. We do not have a spare nation. We have only one Kenya. Tuko na nchi nyingine tunaweza kwenda sisi? Mnasema tukae Kenya? Vijana wa Kenya mnasema tutaweka amani? Vijana wa Kenya mnasema tutaweka amani? Hebu nisikie tena, mnasema we want peace. Kuresoi mnasemaje? Kuresoi mnasemaje? Na Nakuru? Na Kenya? Yes, we want peace. Sijui kama tunaelewana. Tuko pamoja? Na saa hiyo mimi napanga hii maneno ya Kenya. Mimi nimesema I am ready, I am willing, I am available to consult with as many leaders who are willing to consult with us, so that we can form a government that is going to bring Kenya together, so that we can face the challenges of our nation together, so that we can sort out the challenges that face us, the challenges of unemployment, the challenges of public expenditure, the challenges of public debt, the challenges that face our nation, including the challenge of corruption. I am ready, I am willing, I am prepared to consult and work with leaders who are willing to consult and work with us. Sisi tuko tayari kabisa, lakini kama mtu hataki, hatuwezi kumlazimisha, kwa sababu Kenya ni nchi ya demokrasia. Tuko pamoja jameni? Mnasema tuunganishe Kenya? Mnasema tuunganishe Kenya? Hebu nielewa na anasema tuunganishe Kenya. Bas, kunguma tinye ngalio. Mimi nimesema asante sana. Hapa niko na deputy wangu anaitwa Rigiji. Si awasalimie.
Chamge, mumefurahi kuona kiongozi wetu.
So it can't get more murkier and more confusing than how the president is making it. In while making a statement, the president have said, President Ruto is saying that Ford Foundation are actually behind the protests. Now, this is very new, this is very shocking coming from President Ruto, because by the time when he flew to the US, he actually met Biden. And for that organization is politically aligned to Biden camp. Remember, there is an election that is supposed to happen in the US. But that Ford Foundation is politically aligned with Joe Biden, the President of the United States of America. So when he claims that that organization is behind it, and remember, this is after first the president was in, I think that was Kajiado, and they said there are foreign organizations that are behind this anarchy happening here. And we asked the question that if there are those organizations, then why don't you come out and at least name one or two? And then when he flew to Nakuru, he said it is that Ford Foundation. Now, I know this is not an alien thing for an African president. This organization has received the same complaints or the same backlash from Nigeria when, despite of running some projects, it was the former then president back in 2014 believed that the Ford Foundation was behind political instability in Nigeria. In 2017, in South Africa, Jacob Zuma also complained about Ford Foundation, that that organization was fully behind the move to destabilize ANC from South Africa. And in Uganda, it is the same Ford Foundation that was allegedly blamed to be pushing the LGBTQ rights in Uganda up until the time when Museveni really called the shots and said he was not supporting LGBTQ. So, of course, it's an organization that has been supporting democratic activities, democratic NGOs that pursue democracy and good governance. I don't know that's good governance, but it's democracy and governance in Africa. Because one thing I don't believe is these foreign organizations, whether these foreign organizations really, they mean it when they say they're supporting African countries. Now, there is a spin to this, and not necessarily, not exactly a spin, but there is an interesting development to this, and I want us to look at it. Because much as we are blaming Organization X for this, we started from somewhere. First, pro-government bloggers said it is Mount Kenya billionaires who are sponsoring the protests. And with around the Mount Kenya billionaires, the narrative was then developed to Uhuru Kenyatta and Rigathi Gachagua. Then after that, it came out, now they said, they're just some other foreign entities. And they said some other insiders. Now the last one, they've now said it is Ford Foundation. And now people are saying, are Ford Foundation funding Mount Kenya billionaires to fund the protests? And I've been asking here, much as we look for the financial, if the financial is the problem, if the financial is the one who is paying those who are protesting, then why don't you then go and dialogue with the financial? If you believe that is where the problem is, and the legitimate calls by these young people is not genuine, but they're just being used. I've always believed you just need to be very objective and say, okay, fine. I know that what you young people are talking about is not your thing and you're being used by so and so. And so you go after that financial. But that is just a bit of it. The big question that I want to answer today, and that is what I would want us to confront. What do we see? How about what do you see politically? An organization that probably is aligned towards Joe Biden. Joe Biden, the president of the US, that has been using President Ruto to infiltrate Africa. That organization is being blamed, or rather is being used as a punching bag on what exactly is happening. What is on it? Before I want to analyze it this way, I want to look at the Ruto fallout with the US, that angle of Ruto fallout with the US. I also want to look at it as it being used as a political propaganda. And allow me to draw in the geopolitics in it. Immediately, after Ruto went to US, he came up with some promissory notes. They will build a road from Mombasa to Nairobi. They'll pump in some big loans in Coca-Cola. There is a joint venture of establishing some investment with, establishing some data center with UAE and some other investors, Silicon Savannah, all that. But the other part of it was that President Ruto was looking to the west and was leaving the east. But a week after, let's say like 2 weeks after the US trip, the president was also in Switzerland to attend some peace summit between Ukraine and Russia. So he made some statement about Russia and this and that. Now Russia is also politically integral for Kenya. If this is a political propaganda, then the government is using the Ford Foundation as a political propaganda to send a message by telling America that we are unhappy with you, or the other sending a message that we are unhappy with our relationship with America. Ford Foundation is based in America and has been supporting many other organizations here. So what is doing, in the interest of other foreign powers from other areas, like for example Russia, of serving the interest of the East, President Ruto is using this narrative to send a message and say that probably you guys are behind what's happening here, and that's why I will disassociate with America. So it could be a political propaganda, but to run a geopolitical shift from the West to the East. Because maybe the president has realized, and what would have caused this is the president has realized that the projects they got from the US are the ones that he would want to use to drink the public, or rather to campaign with in the next general election. But those are not forthcoming. But if you go to China, if you arrive at a deal to establish a road for China to build a road in Africa, it will not take them years. They will come and start building it like immediately. So he's thinking about that. Number two, if that is a political propaganda by Kenya Kwanza, then what they want to achieve is, they know very well that that Ford Foundation has been supporting many NGOs. Many NGOs in the civil society that are fighting for democracy, that are fighting for violation of fighting for human rights and this and that. So they want to suppress the operation of these NGOs. That is what they would want to achieve by ensuring that they suppress the operations of those NGOs. Sorry, someone is calling. I'm shooting with the phone. Yeah, by there I have two cameras, so I spoiled my camera when in that accident. The one thing that got destroyed is my camera, so the one that I had traveled with. I do have two. So, so one thing that happened here, and that is what I wanted to explain here, is they want these organizations that have been benefiting from Ford Foundation not to benefit. And the best thing is to run that propaganda tool that you guys are actually behind the protest. And you know, it's about anarchy. It's about the anarchy that has been going on. Lastly, if it is also and because I said there are two ways to it, it's either a propaganda tool being used or it's a signal of Ruto breaking ties with Joe Biden. So I'm still looking into it being used as a propaganda. The other angle of it being used as a propaganda is Ruto is looking at, has evaluated as Ruto's relationship and is saying that probably he's realizing that this organization, or rather the infiltration, he's realizing that even in the last general election, he could have, maybe he benefited from these organizations. Yes, because one thing in the last general election is there was foreign infiltration. And the US has many machinations around it. There are so many other tools they can use around it. So William Ruto has realized that probably this is one of the tools that is at the disposal of the US to infiltrate the Kenyan politics, having been one of the beneficiaries of that infiltration. So maybe he's looking around, he's realizing, okay, this Gen Z movement can metamorphosize into a political movement, and then it can destabilize or it can deny me an opportunity to maybe get the second term. So having realized that that has been one of his sponsors, of one of his supporters, and is breaking ties with him, with that Ford Foundation, he's now blame shifting so that he would malign the organization and will stop getting into it. Or maybe feeling that, because number one, it could be true that Ford Foundation is supporting, but maybe not supporting the protest, but supporting the organizations that are on the governance in the other areas. That exactly is it. They've been supporting governance. They've been supporting even reproductive health for some time. I did a project known as Maverick of supporting the elderly, the mature woman on maybe demand creation and behavior change on family planning. That was in Kilifi. That was in Kilifi because of there were so many unplanned births there. Ford Foundation was one of the sponsors of that project. I remember that project because it was a donor-funded project under the Population Services Kenya, PS Kenya. That was back then in 2018, I think I'm not wrong. So it is not something new for someone to say that Ford Foundation is supporting so and so, because they've indeed been supporting some activities. And what he's saying, and this is a big risk, because if they stop supporting some of these projects in these NGOs, then some Kenyans are going to lose jobs. Those who are actually working on project-based, people who work in NGOs understand this better. Sometimes you can be employed because of what you're doing. So I've analyzed it as a political propaganda, as a propaganda tool, what exactly it would mean. Now, on the other end, let's look at if the Ford Foundation, the attack on Ford Foundation that President Ruto was making is based on an assumption, rather perception, or rather understanding that Ruto has fallen out with Joe Biden. What exactly is the state of that relationship? What exactly is the state of that relationship? Now, the first thing I see that could be behind this, that those who are politically aligned to Joe Biden are the ones that William Ruto, because I believe William Ruto can make a call to senior government ranks in US and tell them that organization so and so is behind what's happening here and here. Even some, I saw Pauline Njoroge saying there is Jimmy Carter, one of the areas he visited, is getting supported, is being supported by Ford Foundation. So some of these allegations he made about that are actually not in good spirit, because part of that organization and so it's very clear about that. So I want to look at it this way. What could be the break point? The breaking point between Ruto and Biden. Number one, I think the fruition of that data center, of the fruition of implementation of American projects as a political tool, or rather a political scorecard that William Ruto will use in 2022. This is what I'm saying. Before, America said they want to build a data center in Olkaria, in Rift Valley. Now, but recently, something happened. America said, because it was supposed to be done as a partnership between Kenya, there is American investor, Microsoft, and some organization, I think also from, some company also from United Arab Emirates. But America made a condition, and they said that because they want to establish a data center in Kenya, and they're in partnership with United Arab Emirates, the United Arab Emirates must cut its ties with China completely. Why? Because China would pirate on their data here. So for that project to be hatched, for that project to succeed, then one thing must happen. One of the things that must clearly happen is that China must break the United Arab Emirates must break its ties with China. That's impossible. That is very impossible. Now, you look at this project, that data center will be one of the flagship projects of Kenya Kwanza administration. That one they would have used successfully. If you look at the other one on Mombasa-Nairobi highway that is supposed to be established, the two conditions are met. The first condition is the government of Kenya must force the usage of that highway as priority choice one for goods on transit between Mombasa to Nairobi. This is to maximize its use. So that if US is going to build that, then they will ensure that every cargo from Mombasa to Nairobi come through that highway. But remember, there is the traditional road and there is also the SGR. So what the US was planning was to outdo SGR. Now, government would really find it difficult and walk into a business turmoil, a business trouble with the transit companies for you to force them to use that highway that the US is going to build on it. And number two, it was going to be funded by loans from local banks here. That is what people are asking. So are they bringing money, or we still want to fleece on our resources that we have here? What the President Ruto has realized is in 2027, he has nothing that he can point and say, because I went to the West, I have achieved this and this. Compare that with Uhuru Kenyatta. Uhuru Kenyatta was able, even by the time he's leaving, you can say SGR, you can say the expressway, and point out some dams and roads that these were built courtesy of my relationship going to China. That's one thing that William Ruto has realized. Number two, the Haiti mission confusion. You know, Haiti mission, the other day, I analyzed it here, that a UN representative was complaining that US gave money for buying artillery machines, establishment of the barracks for the Kenya police, for the Haiti mission, and retraining of some police officers back in Kenya. But the other member countries, the UN member countries, were supposed to contribute in the tune of 12 billion towards that mission, and that has failed. Now, President Biden even tried level best to try to, he tried his level best to try to, by the time he met President Ruto, there was an attempt to try to show Ruto like he's the head boy, but that really has not shown any fruition. Now, the other one is Biden unhappy with Ruto, or rather breaking ties with Ruto. I think the US really overestimated President Ruto. And because he went and gave those lyrical speeches, laced with very good statements and promises and tough talking, he was given standing ovation in the European Parliament, this and that, and spoke with that much, he was overrated. But people didn't know, maybe the America did not know the extent, the real things on ground. That what Ruto was implementing, or rather had been implementing, the same bottom-up thing that had been implemented, was not being implemented. In fact, what was happening is wealth gathering. So, because the image is already dented, probably the President Ruto was expecting that you'll get a bit of some intelligence or something for the US to help in the situation, and it's not helping, then he's turning back in it. And Biden has been using President Ruto to infiltrate Africa. Do you know, countries that were even in AGOA, not that they're going back because of the president, there's no way. And there is an election going on there. So William Ruto understands that because an election is there and probably Biden can lose, he can lose out on some. So try to not to be seen as politically aligning with Biden. But most of it, the Biden axis to infiltrate Africa through President Ruto is not there. In fact, I would wonder, what I think I would ask, if Ford Foundation is supporting the protest, is paying for protests to happen, then what will be their interest? What will they gain? If another president takes over, what will they gain? It will not be there. And that is why, if you ask me, out of the two, I see it as a political propaganda. Thank you.